Beyblade has been around for over 20 years now. During that time, we've seen a lot of cool and weird gimmicks. And by now, TT should know what works and what doesn't. Here are my top 10 Beyblade gimmicks that definitely shouldn't come back to Beyblade X. Number 10, we have the Bullet Driver. The clone gimmick has come back a few times. It was first used on Phantom Fox in the Classic Gen, then Striker Drone, and Devilos was the last one to use it. While the gimmick looks really cool in the anime, in real life it doesn't work that well. The mini Beyblade is really small and doesn't have that much weight to it. One attack and this thing is done. Surprisingly, Striker Drone might be the best at using this gimmick. Also, Devilos looks really weird without the mini Beyblade. It looks naked. Even though this gimmick probably shouldn't come back, I do think that it can still be improved. Add some thickness to it, make the contact points out of metal, and maybe put a magnet inside of the main bay so it's not a double-edged sword. This gimmick might be worth the return. Number 9. Metal Balls. The metal ball gimmick has been used pretty much since the beginning of Beyblade. It was first used on Dracyl's shield. The metal balls on this bay were actually pretty big, so I can see it making a difference in performance. But the metal balls nowadays are a lot smaller. Earth Virgo had the gimmick, and I didn't notice any difference in performance when I changed the spin track. Jade Jupiter had the gimmick as well, and I didn't have this bay, but according to the Beyblade Wiki, people were very disappointed in it. Then you have Zillion Zeus, and once again the metal balls are very small and have very little effect. There was an evolution for Zeus, but after that the gimmick was never seen again. If TT decides to bring this gimmick back, then they should probably make the balls big again so that they actually make a difference. Number 8. Claws. You may mainly know it from Sagittario, but there was a plastic djembe called Slash Riger that also had the gimmick. The claws are supposed to give more stamina, but it has very little effect. And in my own experience, stamina types suffer from this gimmick because when the claws are constantly being hit, the bay loses even more stamina. But for some reason, TT keeps on bringing it back. It's one thing to bring it back a second time, but then they brought it back for Archer Griffin, even though by then the spin track was outclassed. Then they brought it back for Horrorsuit, and the gimmick never returned. There are also bays like Befall and Serpent that had claw gimmicks, and I never thought these made a difference. For number 7, we have Wheels. I don't know what's up with TT and Wheels. There was a driver that was literally just a wheel. I guess someone wanted to make a Beyblade circus. Mainly we have Satum with its wheel gimmick. This gimmick featured free spinning wheels that were supposed to repel attacks, but they massively fail at it. The gimmick was brought back with Curse Satum, but they still failed. There was also another driver with wheels on it, made to make the bay spin back upright when knocked off balance, giving it good life after death, but it does the complete opposite. The wheel gimmick was completely useless and should not make a comeback. Number 6. Rocktivore Wings. This gimmick was first seen on Rocktivore in Evolution/God. The gimmick is supposed to increase stamina, but that didn't work. Then TT was like, okay, let's change the gimmick a little. And according to the Beyblade Wiki, the gimmick is now supposed to parry attacks, but it still doesn't work. The only time the gimmick possibly worked is when the wings were made of metal, but when Glide came out, they were no longer made of metal. The gimmick never worked, and TT kept bringing it back. Not only that, but the wings could easily break. I mean, that most likely wouldn't happen in Beyblade X since the wings would be made out of metal, but still. The wings were always a gimmick that had no value. Number 5. The Triple Attacker. In the Plastic Gen, there was an attack ring called the Triple Attacker. Tactor? Wait, Tactor? No. It's called the Triple Attacker. It was released on Burning Cerberus and had 3 blades that each had a different type of attack: Spike, Upper, and Smash. However, it cannot use any of these attacks effectively. Also, for some reason, TT decided to put this ring on a stamina type, which is really weird. Like, why would you do that? I don't see this gimmick coming back, especially since bays have been using mode changes to switch between the different attacks. But there are also a lot of old gimmicks that came back in Burst, so you never know. For number 4, I have the Trick Driver. The Trick Driver was one of the worst drivers to exist. It's a driver with a stamina and attack type performance tip, with a free spinning part to change between the two during battle. But the gimmick makes the bay unstable, and in my experience, I mostly see the attack tip at work. This driver was first seen on Judgment Joker, which I still play with, I won't lie, but I put the Blitz disc on it so it doesn't burst as easily. There was a similar gimmick back in the Plastic Gen on Samurai Changer, but instead of a free spinning part, this driver had an impact mechanism instead, but the driver itself still didn't function well. I guess technically Final Survive and Generate are kind of the same, but because of the way they work in battle, they're a lot different, and you're better off using one of those than the Trick Driver. Now we're at the top 3 gimmicks that should not return, and at the number 3 spot, I put down Barrier. As soon as I saw the Barrier gimmick in the anime, I knew it would be crap, because it's just like Sagittarius Claws, but a lot worse. The gimmick works by protruding rubber around the layer, creating a barrier, but the rubber protrusions make the bay lose basically all of its stamina. The gimmick can work pretty well against opposite spin opponents, but it barely wins. Variant Lucifer was the first to feature this gimmick, then they got rid of it with Lucifer the End, which was a step in the right direction, but then they brought it back with Barricade Lucifer? This bay didn't perform as bad as Variant, but it's still really bad. Number 2, Extended Blades. I don't know why they keep bringing this gimmick back. You think TT would have looked at Hasbro's Deploy and Destroy series and see how awful this gimmick is? But instead they decided to use it on Hyperion Burn. Hyperion's lair could have been really good, but because of its limit break system with the blades extending out, all of its attack power is stripped away, and the gimmick makes the layer useless. Now, with the blades extended diagonally instead of outward, then that would probably make the extended blades actually work, but with what we've gotten so far, it seems that won't ever happen. Extended blades also give a bay less stamina, and Hyperion Burn had a dash driver and it still had bad burst resistance. Hyperion wasn't even the first burst bay with this gimmick. Boom Calzar and Celta Regulus had a similar gimmick, and Calzar might have been a pretty good bay, I don't really remember, but the gimmick was still useless, and Regulus was a really bad bay, and TT still gave Hyperion extended blades. This gimmick just has too many negatives and shouldn't come back. Now, the worst Beyblade gimmick of all time that should definitely, under no circumstance, should return at all is suction cups. I guess someone wanted another gimmick for the Beyblade Circus, because TT put a suction cup on a Beyblade. The Quest driver was featured on Orb Engard. The suction cup on the driver is supposed to create high knockout resistance, and while it does work, it comes with a massive loss of stamina, and the bay tilts a lot, causing it to scrape. Luckily, we never saw this gimmick again in Burst, and hopefully TT learned their lesson, and the gimmick never again sees the light of day. Anywho, there are my top gimmicks that shouldn't be in Beyblade X. Let me know what gimmicks you don't want to see in this new generation, and remember, stay animated.